today we're tackling a titan. I'm talking about arguably the greatest animated film of the 90s and, maybe of all time. We're talking about The Lion King.
It's a big one.
It is. And honestly, I'm just ready to bask in the nostalgia, the music, that sunrise, the whole Hamlet with lions drama of it all. To me, it's just a masterpiece about family, destiny, finding your place in the world.
It is a masterpiece of filmmaking, I'll give you that.
I don't think there's a single person listening who doesn't get chills when they hear that opening chant, Nance Inganyama Bagiti Baba. It hits you right in the chest.
It's iconic, absolutely. Wow. But I think we need to maybe pump the brakes on the nostalgia train before it leaves the station. Because we actually look at the source material we're digging into today, specifically this really sharp critical analysis called The Divine Right to Eat. We're not dealing with a cute story about a cub finding his way.
Okay.
We're dealing with what might be the most sophisticated piece of authoritarian propaganda ever marketed to children.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately. Hold on. You're saying my childhood favorite, the movie that taught me about the circle of life, is authoritarian propaganda.
I am.
That feels aggressive. It feels like you're coming for my soul here.
It is aggressive, and I do apologize to your inner child in advance. But the evidence, it's right there on the screen. Our deep dive today is going to analyze the Pride Lands, not as some Disney utopia, but as a rigid caste system.
A caste system. Wow.
We're looking at a theocratic autocracy that uses religion, this circle of life, to justify what the report calls the divine right to eat. By the end of this, I think you might not see Mufasa as the benevolent father figure anymore.
I don't know if I'm ready for that.
You might see him as like a Border Patrol agent for a segregated state whose main job is just making sure the elite stay fed.
Wow. Okay. I'm feeling a little defensive already, which I guess means we're onto something good. I mean, Mufasa is the ultimate dad, but if we're going to ruin my childhood, where do we even start?
We have to start with the cornerstone. The biggest, most beautiful lie in the whole film.
Which is?
The circle of life.
Oh, come on. The circle of life is beautiful. It's the scene where Mufasa is on Pride Rock with Simba at sunrise. He's explaining how the kingdom works. It's about nature and connection and balance. Everything the light touches, it's iconic.
It is a masterclass in political gaslighting. Seriously. Let's look at that scene really closely, frame by frame. Mufasa is showing Simba his domain. And he says, everything the light touches is our kingdom.
Right.
And Simba, in what is maybe the only moment of critical thinking he shows in the entire film, asks the one question that should bring the whole system crashing down.
He asks, but Dad, don't we eat the antelope?
Exactly. The perfect question. It exposes the core contradiction of their society.
Right. And Mufasa has that great answer. He says, yes, Simba, but let me explain. When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass, and so we are all connected in the great circle of life. It's poetic. It comforts Simba. It comforted me.
It's poetic. And it is a complete fabrication of reality designed to pacify the victims. Think about the power dynamic there. He's equating two completely different things.
I hope so.
Mufasa is equating the violent, terrifying slaughter of a sentient being, an antelope that wants to live, that feels fear, that has a family, with the passive biological decomposition of a carcass into soil. It's absurd.
And you put it that way. Yeah, it does sound a bit like a raw deal for the antelope. It's a false equivalency.
It's a massive one. He's telling the antelope, it's okay that I'm going to hunt you down and rip your throat out, because eventually, decades from now, after I die of old age, my corpse will be fertilizer.
Yeah, that's not a great comfort when you're on the menu tonight.
It's not a comfort at all. Imagine a factory owner telling his workers, look, I take all the profits and you do all the work for minimum wage, but eventually we both retire and die, so really it's an equal partnership.
Yeah.
It's nonsense.
So it frames the relationship as symbiotic.
When it's not. It's parasitic. The lions provide nothing to the ecosystem. They don't pollinate, they don't till the soil, they just eat. But if the antelope, the zebra, the wildebeest all realized that they vastly outnumber the lions, the regime would collapse overnight.
So it's a way to stop a revolution before it starts. You convince the food that being eaten is a spiritual act.
It's genius in a truly twisted way.
It's the opium of the masses, isn't it?
Straight out of Marxist theory. The goal of that speech isn't to teach biology, it's to manufacture consent. If the prey animals believe that getting eaten is just their contribution to the circle, they won't organize. They won't fight back.
They will bow.
They will bow. And remember the opening scene. They do bow.
They do. The zebras, the giraffes, the antelope, they all come to Pride Rock and bow to the baby lion who is literally going to eat their children in a few years.
Exactly. That is the power of the ideology. Which brings us to the actual structure of this regime. Because it's not just about what they eat, it's about who gets to rule.
Yeah.
In the movie, we just accept it. Lions are kings. It's presented as nature.
Yeah, lions are the king of the beasts. It's a trope I don't even question. It just feels right.
And that is what political philosophers call the naturalistic fallacy. The film posits that biology is destiny. Lions are born to rule. Antelopes are born to be eaten. And, as we'll see, hyenas are born to starve.
It's a caste system based on species.
It perfectly mirrors the divine right of kings, or any feudal system.
Hmm.
Political legitimacy isn't based on merit or skill or, God forbid, a democratic process. The animals don't vote for Mufasa. He rules because of his bloodline and his physical might. It's an absolute monarchy.
Okay, but you have to admit Mufasa is portrayed as a good king. He's not like Scar. He talks about balance. He respects the creatures of the Pride Lands. He even warns Simba not to take more than he needs.
And that's the neoliberal trap the film sets for us. The source material describes Mufasa's style of rule as a restrained predatory economy.
A restraint?
A restrained predatory economy. He's not good in the sense that he grants rights or freedom or safety to his subjects. He's good because he regulates the consumption. He manages the herd like a farmer manages livestock.
So you're saying it's not about morality, it's about sustainability.
Exactly. He doesn't want to overhunt, not because he loves the antelope, but because if he kills them all, he runs out of food next year. It's just resource management. He's a smart capitalist protecting his assets. His balance is about ensuring a sustainable food source for the elites, the lions.
So he's basically a CEO ensuring the company is sustainable for the shareholders who are just him and his family.
Precisely.
And Scar is the rogue CEO who liquidates all the assets for a short-term gain and bankrupts the company.
You've got it. Mufasa understands that to maintain the lifestyle of the 1%, the lions, you need to make sure the working class, the herds, can reproduce just enough to feed you tomorrow. It's cold, calculated resource extraction disguised as spiritual wisdom.
And every CEO needs a management team. This is where the supporting cast comes in right here. Let's talk about Zazu. Growing up, I just thought he was the funny British bird. You know, Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean vibes.
It's not just flavor, it's coding. I have to ask, why is he British? In an African savanna full of American-accented lions.
I just assumed it was to sound proper and authoritative.
It's because he represents the comprador class. In post-colonial theory, the comprador is the member of the colonized population who collaborates with the colonizers for status and safety.
So Zazu is a collaborator.
He's a prey animal, a hornbill. He should be on the menu. But he collaborates with the predators. His very proper British accent codes him as the colonial administrator. He's the local civil servant making sure the empire runs smoothly for the crown.
Oh, wow. I can see that. He's always flying around giving the morning report. I used to skip that song, but now I'm wondering what's really in it.
The morning report is an audit. He's not singing about the weather. He's counting the biological resources available for consumption. The herds are on the move here. The buzzards are circling there.
He's taking inventory of the pantry.
He's taking inventory. He doesn't question the morality of eating his peers. He just files the paperwork to make sure the predation is efficient and orderly.
Yeah.
He represents the banality of evil within a bureaucratic state. He's the guy who stamps the papers that send people to their doom, just doing his job.
That makes his relationship with Mufasa so much darker. And then you have Rafiki. He's the spiritual guy, the mystic, the wise old monkey.
Rafiki is the church. He is the state religion personified. His role is to provide the theocratic legitimacy for the monarchy.
The opening scene again.
Think about that opening ceremony. It's not just a baby shower, it's a coronation. Rafiki, the priest, lifts the baby lion, the future killer. And the clouds part, a divine light shines down. He puts the juice and the dust on his forehead. It's a religious anointing.
It connects the king to the gods, basically. It's a divine mandate.
Correct. Rafiki's entire function is to ensure the subjects believe that the king is ordained by the heavens, by the great kings of the past, who are literally in the stars. It creates this unbreakable feedback loop.
How so?
If you challenge the king, you aren't just challenging a lion, you're challenging the will of the ancestors and the universe itself. It makes rebellion not just treason, but sacrilege. The church and the state are one and the same in the Pride Lands.
This is getting so dark, but it makes so much sense. We have the executive power, which is Mufasa, the bureaucracy, Zazu, and the church, Rafiki, all working together to keep the antelope in line. But then They're the ones who aren't in line, the outcasts.
The hyenas.
The hyenas.
Yes. And this is where the political allegory becomes, I think, undeniable. If the Pride Lands are the manicured, wealthy, suburban utopia, the global north, the gated community, then the elephant graveyard is the ghetto.
It's the other side of the tracks.
It's the Bantustan. It's the global south. It's the place where the undesirables are forced to live.
The visual contrast is just. It's so stark. The Pride Lands are all green and gold, lush, vibrant. The elephant graveyard is gray. It's full of bones, steam vents, shadows. It looks like a nuclear wasteland.
And we have to look at the geography of segregation here. What's one of Mufasa's first commands to Simba? You must never go there.
It's a forbidden zone, a hard border.
And Mufasa functions as a border patrol agent. Think about his heroic moments in the first act. They almost all consist of him violently beating back starving locals who cross that border looking for food.
That puts a completely different spin on the scene where he saves Simba and Nala from the hyenas. I always cheered when he roared and the hyenas scattered.
But from their perspective?
From their perspective, they were starving. They live in a wasteland with no food. They found a potential meal too lost, trespassing children in or at least near their territory. And then the militarized police force, Mufasa, showed up to brutally beat them down.
He is enforcing apartheid?
Yeah.
The hyenas are segregated?
And they are segregated not because they committed some specific crime, but because of what they are. Right, because at the start of the movie, Shenzi, Banzai, and Ed haven't really done anything wrong other than exist and be hungry. They haven't tried to overthrow anyone yet.
Exactly. This is biological essentialism, which is the foundational logic of racism. The film tells us, and Mufasa's policies enact, that hyenas are inherently greedy, dangerous, and bad. Therefore, they deserve to starve in a ghetto. Mufasa doesn't offer them aid. He doesn't create a food program. He doesn't trade with them. He walls them off to die.
And we have to talk about how they're coded. Because unlike the lions, who have these very grand, royal, Shakespearean, or standard American accents, James Earl Jones, Jeremy Irons.
The primary hyenas are voiced by Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin.
Right.
They use what was, at the time, coded as African-American vernacular English and Chicano street slang. They are racially coded as the urban poor, drawing on specifically Black and Latino stereotypes of the 1990s. The film relies on these tropes, that they're lazy, constantly looking for a handout, yet also dangerous and gang-like, to demonize them in the eyes of the audience.
So you have the noble, well-spoken British and American-coded lions on top, and the urban, slang-using minorities segregated in a wasteland. It's not exactly subtle when you lay it out like that.
It's a necropolitical system.
Yeah.
That's a term from the philosopher Achille Mbembe. It means the power to dictate who lives and who dies. Or maybe more accurately, who is let die.
Let die.
Mufasa exercised the power of social death over the hyenas. By forcing them to live in a place with no water or food, he is passively executing them. And the circle of life, his great spiritual system, explicitly excludes them. They are treated as untouchables who have no place in the hierarchy at all.
And the movie treats their suffering as a joke. I remember the line where they say, we're dangling at the bottom of the food chain. We're supposed to laugh at that.
We laugh at their starvation. That is how effective the propaganda is. He completely dehumanizes the underclass so that their pain becomes a source of entertainment.
It really is a rigged system. Which, okay, that brings us to the one guy who actually points this out, the villain, Scar.
Here is where it gets really, really interesting. If you strip away the villain music and the green, smoky lighting and the sarcastic sneer, Scar is the only revolutionary character in the film. He is the only one who acknowledges the suffering of the underclass.
He does it that one line to the hyenas, stick with me and you'll never go hungry again.
Think about that promise. Bread and roses. That is a classic socialist populist platform. Scar represents the disenfranchised intellectual, the physically weaker brother who relies on his wits, who forms a coalition with the lumpen proletariat, the ragged, excluded working class, to overthrow the aristocracy.
He wants to integrate the society.
He literally proposes the lion and the hyena come together. He wants to abolish the apartheid border. He's basically looking at the system and saying, this is broken. The 1% Mufasa and his family are hoarding all the food and good land. Let's take over and distribute the resources.
That sounds... it sounds reasonable. When you say it like that, it sounds like a good idea.
It is reasonable. And that's the problem the filmmakers have, isn't it? They know that message is appealing. Ending hunger. Equality. That sounds pretty good to most people. So how do they stop the audience from rooting for Scar?
They make him a Nazi.
They make him a literal Nazi. They have to weaponize imagery, because his political platform is too attractive on its own. We have to talk about the musical number, Be Prepared.
Oh, that scene is iconic. But yeah, the marching hyenas.
It's not just marching. The hyenas are goose-stepping. The camera angles are all low, looking up at Scar on a high podium. You have these beams of light shooting up straight behind him. It is a shot-for-shot recreation of imagery from Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will.
The Nazi propaganda film.
The Nazi propaganda film, specifically the Cathedral of Light from the Nuremberg rallies. This is not an accident.
That is a wild choice for a Disney movie. Here's a catchy song about feeding the poor. Also, by the way, he's Hitler.
It is a deliberate and, frankly, malicious political conflation. The film takes Scar's socialist goal, feeding the hungry underclass, and wraps it in Nazi aesthetics. It is explicitly telling the audience, if you try to overthrow the natural order, if you try to have a revolution for equality, you will inevitably end up with fascism.
It erases the entire middle ground of, say, democracy or social reform.
It erases it completely. It tells you that your only choices are the benevolent king, Mufasa, or literal Hitler, Scar. There is no third option.
That is incredibly manipulative. It's associating the fight against systemic hunger with the greatest evil of the 20th century. It basically says to the audience, don't ask for more food or you're a Nazi.
It's powerful, effective propaganda. And there's another layer to Scar, too, which the analysis points out. He's coded as the decadent liberal.
Meaning what, exactly?
Look at him compared to Mufasa. Mufasa is hyper-masculine. He's got this big, deep voice. He's strong, traditional. He solves problems with his muscles with violence. Scar is effeminate, sarcastic, physically weak. He relies on his intellect and his words. He is queer-coded, from his languid mannerisms to his theatrical camp delivery. He represents a classic conservative fear of the urban intellectual who uses clever words to manipulate the mob and destroy traditional values. The film hates him not just because he's a Nazi, but because he's unnatural in their worldview. He rejects the circle of life. He tries to engineer a new society, and the film punishes him severely for it.
So Scar takes over. He kills Mufasa, which is, bad, but he fulfills his promise. He integrates the hyenas. The border is down. Lions and hyenas are living side by side. And then everything goes wrong.
Everything collapses. The Pride lands, once lush and green, turn into the same gray wasteland as the elephant graveyard.
And we need to look at why the film says it goes wrong. The narrative, as Nala and Zazu explain it, is that the hyenas were too greedy. They ate everything. There's no food, no water.
Which goes right back to that racist, essentialist idea that they are just parasites who can't control themselves.
It's a Malthusian argument, isn't it?
It's a classic Malthusian argument. The film argues that the poor must be kept poor and segregated because they lack the nobility and restraint of the lions. If you give them access to resources, they will destroy the earth. It blames the victims for the economic collapse. It's the political argument of, see, we told you, you can't let those people into the suburbs. They'll ruin the property value and eat all the landscaping.
But it's not just that they overate. This is the part that always bugged me, even as a kid. The weather changes. The rain literally stops when Scar becomes king. That doesn't make any sense.
This is maybe the most damning evidence of the film's ideology. The report calls it ecological fascism. It relies on the ancient Fisher King myth.
What's Fisher King?
It's an old archetype from Arthurian legend and beyond. The idea is that the health of the land is mystically tied to the health and legitimacy of the king. If the king is good and rightful, the land flourishes. If he is corrupt or illegitimate, the land becomes a wasteland.
So, because the wrong guy is on the throne, the guy who broke the natural order, nature itself, rebels.
Exactly. It removes politics from human choice and material reality. It tells the viewer, if you elect the wrong leader, specifically the one who tries to help the poor and integrate society, nature itself will punish you. The sun will stop shining. The rivers will dry up. It validates absolute monarchy as a biological necessity.
It's dictator logic 101.
Absolutely. I am the only thing standing between you and chaos. The gods or nature or the economy will collapse if you remove me. It's the ultimate justification for tyranny.
That is heavy. It implies that social justice causes climate change.
In the world of the film, it literally does. It completely ignores that droughts are meteorological events. It uses magical thinking to justify the existing social hierarchy. If Scar were just a bad manager, maybe there would be fewer antelopes. But the drying up of the water, that's the movie putting its thumb on the scale to prove that his entire project of equality was doomed from the start.
So the kingdom is in ruins. And all this time, Simba has been off living his best life. Let's talk about Hakuna Matata. Because growing up, that was the fun part. No worries.
And from the film's political perspective, Hakuna Matata represents a failed third way. It's an alternative to both Mufasa's monarchy and Scar's revolution.
How so?
Simba drops out of the system entirely.
Yeah.
He goes to live with Timon and Pumbaa in a kind of jungle commune. And crucially, what does he eat?
Grubs. Slimy yet satisfying.
He becomes a vegetarian, or an entomophagist, technically. He steps out of the predatory food chain. He rejects the violence of his class. He lives with a meerkat and a warthog prey animals as equals. This is, by any rational measure, the most moral way to live in this universe. No one gets eaten.
But the film explicitly rejects this lifestyle. It portrays it as immature, silly, and deeply irresponsible. It's a frat house, not a viable society.
Exactly. Nala shows up and is horrified. She shames him. She's like, "What are you doing? You're the king. Get it together."
She shames him for his pacifism. The message is, you could be eating steak, why are you eating bugs?
The film tells us very clearly that to be a real man and a real king, Simba must return to violence. He must return to meat eating. He cannot just opt out of the system. He has a duty to rule and to consume. The hippie alternative is mocked as a phase that boys go through before they accept their patriarchal responsibility.
So Simba goes back, and we get the big showdown, the slow-motion walk-up, Pride Rock in the rain. It's so epic.
It's the violent restoration of the monarchy. And look at how he solves the problem. Simba doesn't use policy. He doesn't sit down and say, okay, the hyenas are hungry, so let's figure out a sustainable agriculture plan. Maybe we can all eat grubs. Maybe we can rotate grazing lands.
No, he goes straight for the claws.
He beats up the poor people. That is his solution. He physically dominates the hyenas who are already starving and weak. And he throws his uncle to be eaten by the mob he once led. It's brutal mob violence that solves the political crisis.
And then as soon as he roars from the top of Pride Rock,
magically, the rain returns. The moment the rightful king reclaims his throne, the weather clears up, the bones wash away, the green returns.
it validates everything. It proves the universe itself wanted Simba to win and for the old system to come back.
It's the ultimate neoliberal fantasy.
Yeah?
The message is that the system itself wasn't broken. It just had a bad manager for a little while. Once you put the rightful CEO back in charge, we can completely ignore the structural inequality that caused the problem in the first place. We don't need to change the hierarchy. We just need a nice king.
But wait, the hyenas, where did they go at the end? They just sort of vanish after eating Scar.
They are banished. They are driven back into the starving ghetto. The segregation is violently restored. The lions go back to the top of the pyramid. The antelope go back to being eaten. And everyone is happy about it.
Because order is restored.
Order is restored. And order in this film is defined as the crushing of the underclass and the security of the elite. The happy ending is a full-circle return to the purity of the beginning. Nothing has changed. The revolution was crushed, and the divine right to eat was reaffirmed for a new generation.
Man, I'm just sitting here thinking about that final shot of the movie with Rafiki holding up Simba and Nala's cub, and now all I see is the cycle of oppression restarting.
The circle of life. It's a grinding rotation of consumption and reproduction that benefits the few at the very top at the expense of the many. It's not a circle, it's a pyramid scheme.
Wait, are we the baddies? That's the only thing going through my head. I feel like I need to apologize to the hyenas. I feel like I need to send a fruit basket to the elephant graveyard.
You should. The film goes to extraordinary lengths to make you hate them, to make you laugh at their starvation, so that you cheer when they are beaten and exiled. It's a masterclass in manipulation. It makes you, the viewer, complicit in the oppression.
So what does this all mean for us? Why does it matter that a 90s Disney movie has these politics? It's just a cartoon, right? Can't we just enjoy the songs and the animation?
I think we can and should enjoy the artistry, but we have to recognize that cultural artifacts like this are how we teach children about the world. The Lion King isn't just a cartoon. It's an instruction manual on hierarchy. It teaches kids that some people are born to rule and others are born to starve. It teaches that this inequality isn't just a fact, but that it's natural and beautiful.
And that if you try to change it, you're a villain. If you question why the lions get to have everything, you're basically Scar. You're a Nazi.
Precisely. It warns you that social mobility leads to destruction. It validates the idea that the elite deserve their wealth because they are inherently nobler or better, while the poor deserve their poverty because they are greedy or lazy. It is a perfect defensive tyranny, wrapped in some of the best songs and most beautiful animation ever made. It conditions us to accept the status quo as the only way.
I don't think I can ever watch the sunrise on Pride Rock the same way again. I'm going to be looking for the Border Patrol agents. I'm going to be looking at the antelope and thinking, run, organize, unionize.
Good. That means you're watching with your eyes open. That means the propaganda didn't quite work this time.
Well, on that cheerful note, I think that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope this has ruined your childhood in the most educational way possible.
Just remember, next time you hear someone talking about the natural order of things or how things are supposed to be, maybe ask yourself, who is doing the eating and who is being eaten?
See you next time.